Hi everyone, Sbtrkt here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Sbtrkt record, Wonder Where We Land. Sbtrkt is the pseudonym of electronic music producer and songwriter Aaron Jerome. I loved his last full-length album. His debut full-length album came out in 2011. I loved his very subtle instrumentals. They were a little sparse. They had very nimble beats on them, some warm bass, well-composed synthesizers. Many of his instrumentals influenced by two-step and UK bass, dubstep. Now, truth be told, the instrumentals on this record were good, but they weren't like amazing to me. You know, it's not like they were meaty with sound play or really dense with detail or just really showstoppers. But I still loved this album because I thought Sbtrkt had an incredible chemistry with his vocal guests, like with Sampha on the song Hold On. I love this song. Perfect track on this record. And then we have Wildfire with Yukimi Nagano of Little Dragon. This is one of the best singles of 2011. Sbtrkt had Jessie Ware before she blew up on this record. Roses Gabor was pretty decent on her track too. I worried a little bit about whether or not Sbtrkt was going to pull through on a second LP because of how heavily dependent my enjoyment of this record was on the vocal guests. Not to mention the musical trends that Sbtrkt was riding in 2011 have all kind of died down by now. Then to pile worry on top of worry, the first big single from this LP dropped, New Drop New York, with Ezra Koenig from Vampire Weekend on vocals. And as I first listened to this song, I just felt this depressing, crushing sense of disappointment come over my entire being. I was thinking, this can't be happening. I'm in an alternate universe right now. Ezra on here doing his usual pretty boy falsetto. He's matching that up with some spoken word non sequiturs. The beat is kind of horrendous. Very heavy bass, some drum circle rhythms. There's some demonic chorus effects too. This track was most definitely, undeniably experimental, but in like the worst of ways. So going into this album, it's very apparent that Sbtrkt is going to be reaching outside of his small camp of mostly UK-based vocalists. However, the results only come through some of the time, like with Higher, that features Rory, of all people. And to me, this track just feels like a mixtape demo. The beat is alright, but there's nothing really about it that says to me, oh, Sbtrkt made this. Rory's got this really quiet, underwhelming flow on this track. I'm just not seeing what makes it so exciting. However, with the song Look Away featuring Caroline Polachek of Chairlift, that's a fantastic track. Really killer chorus vocal melody with some odd effects on it, and even though there are some meandering moments on this track, I'm loving the very sluggish, heavy bass, the hi-hats, the really grand pianos. It's a pretty epic track. And then, of all people, we also get Warpaint on this record, and ASAP Ferg. Voices in my head, voices in my head. At the very start of this song, we see ASAP Ferg doing his best Kid Cudi impression. And the verse itself on this track is incredibly telling, giving a little bit of back history with ASAP Ferg and his father, addiction. There's some very dramatic kind of jazzy drumming in the background of this track, maybe something that would translate to you if you really love that Absol Book of Soul track off of Control System. But adversely, there are also some incredibly goofy moments coming from Ferg lyrically on this track, not only with the mantra of this song, but also like I'm Kurt Cobain. Emotionally and topically, the song felt a little disjointed at times. Or maybe it's just that it wasn't able to take its emotional subject matter and turn it into something compelling. Thankfully on this record, we do get some familiar faces, and for the most part, they do have good performances. People like Sampha and Jessie Ware. But there are some various reasons as to why these tracks don't hit me quite in the same way that the 2011 tracks did. For one, Temporary View. Great tune, great melody at the core of this song, but the really bright, dry, loud, trebly synthesizers that ruin the dynamics of this track really compete with Sampha for attention, and instead of getting a really passionate, electronically tinged soul song, I just kind of feel like, you know, he's thrown onto the back burner when he's really one of the more entertaining things about this song. But then going in the complete opposite direction, we have a track on here where Sampha is just doing a short 1-minute solo piano ballad, and it feels like he's taking over the entire record. Or the song that comes right after, where he's singing over a bit of synthetic funk that sounds like he's collaborating with Thundercat, not putting together a Sbtrkt song. While this track isn't terrible, it only adds to the feeling that this album is like a mixtape. which is kind of strange considering that even though there were a bunch of different vocal guests on Sbtrkt's debut album, it was a pretty cohesive record. However, the track Jessie Ware landed on with this LP, I thought she should have landed on this record again, considering how passionate her vocals were on this track. I thought uniquely passionate for her. I think she was a little more lively than she usually is. And I think the instrumental was incredibly interesting too, with these weird broken pianos. It's a very textured beat. I love some of the risks that Sbtrkt is taking on this record. I just think the end results are kind of scattered and don't get pulled together, especially given how much filler is on this LP, like the Day 1 track and the Day 5 track, which are pretty but don't really add much to the cohesion of these songs. There's the song Everybody Knows, which I thought was going to be an instrumental. I wish was an instrumental because it has this vocal cut playing toward the back end of it that just says, hey, skip this track. And then OCA, which isn't a bad song either. It's a pretty little drone. It's kind of like listening to one of those rainforest effects CDs, but from the year 20XDX, and all the parrots and all the monkeys and the various birds and bugs you hear tweeting and chirping and buzzing are all half machine, half organic beings. At the end of the day, while I didn't love this LP, I still have to give it to Sbtrkt for just taking so many I don't care what happens risks with this record. He was just going to grab some ideas he thought would turn out into some cool songs and just ran with them. I think he brought on a lot of guests and created a lot of sounds that we weren't expecting. It's just that some of these tracks aren't that enjoyable, and even more of them are more surprising for him than they are legitimately interesting. I'm feeling a strong 5 to a light 6 on this thing. Transition, if you've given this record a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Sbtrkt, forever.